Hi everybody, Dr. Tamara Harville here to talk to you about critical thinking skills. And I know you're probably thinking, I already know how to think, but do you know how to think critically? Let's find out. So what exactly is critical thinking? It is a cognitive skill that requires intention, understanding, purpose, discipline. It can be taught. We're not born to think critically. We have to learn how to do that. It is also an essential part of literacy. I love this quote from Albert Einstein. It says, "Education is not the learning of facts, but training the mind to think." This really rings true to me as an instructor because I hear my students in composition claim, well, I'm going to be an engineer, I'm going to be a nurse. Why do I need to learn how to write an essay? Well, it's not just writing an essay. It's getting you to think critically about what it is you're reading, what information you're receiving, how to synthesize this information and put it all together. So it's not just writing an essay. It's critical thinking. Okay, so why critical thinking? Why do we need to do it? Well, if left to ourselves, critical thinking is biased, distorted, partial, uninformed, or downright prejudiced. I know you've probably heard the term fake news or that the media manipulates us. If we can think for ourselves and critically evaluate what we're told, then we can figure it out for ourselves, right? The quality of our lives and that of what we produce, make, or build depends precisely on the quality of our thoughts. So shallow thinking gets shallow results. Excellence in thought is the foundation of a more successful life, personally, professionally, socially, and economically. However, it is a skill that must be systematically cultivated. If you just let people do thinking for you, you're not going to come out very skilled at critical thinking. You have to be able to do it yourself. All right, so critical thinking. Here's some definitions from the Foundation for Critical Thinking. It is the art of analyzing and evaluating thinking with a view to improving it. So it's not just rummaging around in your head. It is analyzing and evaluating and trying to improve it. Okay? It is also self-directed, self-disciplined, self-monitored, and self-corrective thinking. Notice the self in every one of those because no one can critically think for you. You have to learn how to do it. It requires rigorous standards of excellence and mindful command of their use. So there's work involved. It entails effective communication and problem-solving abilities and a commitment to overcoming our native egocentrism and sociocentrism. So think outside the box, take in others' perspectives, and then critically think over the situations. So what is the result? Well, a well-cultivated critical thinker is one who can raise vital questions and problems, formulate them clearly and precisely. Have you ever been sitting in a meeting and somebody asks a question and you're like, wow, that's a really good question. That's because they were critically thinking it over instead of just kind of letting it go in one ear and out the other. A critical thinker also gathers and assesses relevant information, uses abstract ideas to interpret it effectively. So you can't just take things at face value. You have to figure out what's true, what's not true, what's relevant, what's irrelevant. A critical thinker comes to well-reasoned conclusions and solutions, testing them against relevant criteria and standards. So this really goes true with the sciences. If you can't well-reason or come up with well-reasoned conclusions and solutions to your tests, you're not going to come up with any solutions, right? You're not going to be able to develop a new drug because you're not critically thinking about the situation. And a critical thinker also thinks open-mindedly with alternative systems of thought, recognizing and assessing, as need be, their assumptions, implications, and practical consequences. Most of us already come to a topic or situation with assumptions already in our minds. But if we can then evaluate, assess, and find out more information, we can change our assumptions. Okay? And then also a critical thinker, and it looks like I'm blocking part of this, is someone who communicates effectively with others in figuring out solutions to complex problems. So if you're ever in like a group situation and you have to think things through, you'll be able to work with others instead of just, being biased and sticking to your own opinion and blocking off everybody else's thought. It's taking in others' opinions. Okay? There are levels of critical thinking: knowing, comprehending, applying, analyzing, synthesizing, evaluating. And we are going to talk about each one of these individually. First is knowing. Sounds pretty reasonable. We know how to know, right? The knowing level, it involves increasing a student's knowledge level by adding the course material to what they already know. So basically, you're in class, you're learning new stuff. That's knowing, right? Students may be asked to define vocabulary from a textbook, so you're learning new words. You now know a new word. Defining argument terms, recognizing MLA notations and symbols, so that whenever you get out of the class at the end, the stuff that you have learned is what you now know, right? But there's a slight difference between knowing and comprehending. Comprehending requires the student to move beyond mere identification or memorization of course material. So this is where you can paraphrase or summarize ideas. This is bringing an outside thought, providing examples of ideas to explaining relationships between and among these ideas, restating a problem to demonstrate an understanding of the question being asked. So knowing is just the surface level. Comprehending is taking it that next step. Then comes applying. This is where you use and apply course content in a particular situation. So just because you're learning how to write essays does not mean that's all you're going to know how to do. Learning how to synthesize information can be well played out in any situation. Okay, students will be asked to apply audience appeals to essay content. Apply MLA documentation rules and conventions. Use essay structure to organize ideas, to understand instructions, to complete assignments. So application, if you can't follow directions or instructions, if you can't learn just how to read that instruction sheet and apply it to a paper, how are you going to function at any job when they give you directions on how to operate a new piece of equipment or how to do your job? You have to apply what you learn, right? Analyzing. This level requires students to examine information through a filter to break arguments or claims down into parts and discover the relationship between the parts. Then the arguments can be evaluated. So it's like tearing it all apart and looking at all the pieces is analyzing. So students could be asked to analyze the effectiveness of a set of ideas based on audience appeals, or analyze textual information as source material, or analyze events and ideas such as global awareness, civic responsibility. So think of yourself as a sleuth and you're analyzing all the pieces of information that you've read about the topic that you're discussing so that you can put it all together, which is synthesizing. Synthesizing is requiring the students to use two or more sets of information to arrive at an insight that is independent of the material given. So it's not just reporting what you've discovered. It's taking what you thought, what you already knew, and it's taking all these sources and it's kind of integrating them together. That's synthesis, just like the little puzzle piece guys at the bottom. It's putting things together, giving it a new perspective. So synthesis involves the ability of putting together the parts you analyzed and other information to create something original. You reach out for data or ideas derived from a variety of sources. You'll be asked to write introductions, conclusions, independent of the essay content. You'll have position papers in composition classes and maybe provide insights about global events, which we do in my Composition 2 classes specifically. Then we have evaluating. Evaluating level requires the student to measure the relative merits of one or more sets of information against an outside element. So you could evaluate two different writers on two different subjects as to their relative effectiveness in the use of audience appeals, or evaluate multiple outside sources as to the appropriateness for inclusion in a position paper. So you've got all these people with all their ideas. You evaluate each one of them to see how they work with each other. So this person may believe one direction, and this one may believe the other. So evaluating what they have to say and their different perspectives helps you understand it better. So critical thinking is learning. It's not something you're born with. You have to apply it. So responsible learners desire to learn, to acquire or improve skills, and to think in new ways with intention, understanding, purpose, and discipline. If you just come to college and you're expected just to sit there and listen and take notes and then barf it back up again, that's not really doing you justice. Learn how to critically think in all your classes. Learn to apply what you knew, what you already knew, or what you already know. Learn to synthesize, learn to evaluate, learn all these things, and it will help you get along better in life, because knowledge is power. These are the citations that I used for this PowerPoint, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you learned something from it.